The Galactic Academy stood as a beacon of excellence, home to the finest warriors from across the stars. Every species sent their best. Towering Braskers with armored scales, Inzari with lightning-fast reflexes, and the telepathic Vexerans who could predict an enemy's move before they made it. Among them stood Maria Carter, the only human cadet in her class. She was a joke. Whispers followed her through the halls. Some sneered openly, others just laughed, shaking their heads at the sight of the small, unimpressive human attempting to train among galactic elites. It wasn't hatred, just amusement. Humans were a novelty, a primitive race still struggling to find their place in the vast interstellar hierarchy. And here was one, daring to stand among warriors who had honed their combat arts for generations. Her first physical evaluation didn't help. The Braskers outlifted her by a factor of 10. The Inzari finished the endurance trials before she reached the halfway mark. The Vexerans barely considered her a threat. Humans had no psionic abilities, no genetic enhancements, nothing that gave them an edge. Torvek, a 6'5" Zelthian with skin like tempered steel, didn't even try to hide his disdain. They let you in as a courtesy. Human, try not to embarrass yourself. Maria ignored him. She ignored all of them. She wasn't the strongest. She wasn't the fastest. But she had something the others didn't, an ability to adapt. While they relied on their superior physiology, she studied. She memorized their movements, noted their strengths and their weaknesses. During combat drills, she was always the first to fall. But every time, she lasted a little longer. Every time, she learned something new. Instructors dismissed it as stubbornness. Cadets saw it as futility. One observer, however, saw more. Instructor Varric, a retired war strategist, noticed Maria's endurance. Where others tired, she pushed forward. Where others relied on instinct, she analyzed. He saw it before anyone else. The raw potential hidden behind what the others called weakness. One evening, after another brutal day of training, he stopped her outside the barracks. "You're not here to prove them wrong, are you?" he asked. Maria met his gaze. "No, sir." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good, because they're too arrogant to see what's coming." The first real test was approaching, a series of combat simulations designed to push cadets to their limits, a chance for them to prove their worth. No one expected anything from the human. Most assumed she'd be the first to fail. Maria had no intention of failing. She had spent every night reviewing combat footage, memorizing the strengths and weaknesses of every species in the academy. She wasn't stronger, but she could be smarter. The simulations were coming, and Maria Carter was ready. The first combat trial was a one-on-one duel. No weapons, no armor, just raw skill. The cadets gathered in the arena, eager to see who would dominate and who would fall. Maria Carter's name appeared on the screen. Her opponent, Torvek. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The Zelthian was one of the top combatants in the academy, known for his brutal efficiency. His species possessed nearly indestructible skin and the strength to tear through reinforced steel. Against a human, it wasn't a fight. It was a formality. Torvek stepped into the ring, towering over her. "I won't break you too badly," he said. Maria didn't respond. She just studied him, watched the way he shifted his weight, noted how he relied on his size, how his stance left small but exploitable gaps. She didn't need to overpower him. She just needed an opening. The instructor raised a hand. "Begin!" Torvek lunged. Fast. A single strike meant to end the fight immediately. But Maria wasn't there. She sidestepped at the last second, his fist slamming into ground where she had stood. The impact cracked the floor. Gasps rippled through the audience. She moved before he could recover, striking behind his knee. It wasn't enough to take him down, but it disrupted his balance. He turned, swinging wide, but Maria was already ducking, slipping past him, landing quick, precise blows in vulnerable areas. Torvek snarled in frustration. He was stronger. He was faster. But Maria was smarter. She wasn't fighting him head-on. She was outmaneuvering him. The fight lasted longer than anyone expected. Longer than anyone had lasted against him. Torvek, growing desperate, overextended. That's when she struck. A perfectly timed sweep to his legs sent the massive alien crashing to the ground. She had won. Silence. Then the whispers started. Then the disbelief. The human had beaten Torvek. Maria walked away without acknowledging the shocked faces. She had more to prove. The next round began, a free-for-all survival match. 30 cadets. No teams. The last 5 standing would advance. Maria didn't rush into battle like the others. While the stronger species fought head-on, she observed, adapted. She used the environment, striking when it counted, avoiding unnecessary fights. When 2 warriors exhausted each other, she finished them off. When a cadet underestimated her, she used their own aggression against them. The numbers dwindled. More seasoned fighters fell. And somehow, Maria remained standing. By the end, only 5 remained. And among them, against all expectations, stood the human cadet. The final rankings were displayed. Maria Carter was in the top 3. The laughter was gone. The whispers had changed. The human was no joke. She was a problem. The Academy's combat trials were meant to test skill, endurance, and adaptability. But no one expected a real battle. The distress call came from a nearby colony. A routine patrol had gone silent. The Academy sent a team of cadets under the supervision of instructors. It was supposed to be a training exercise, a controlled mission. But when they arrived, the colony was burning. Unknown hostiles had already overrun the settlement. No communications. No survivors in sight. Then the first attack came. An ambush. Shadowy figures with shifting forms. Faster than the Inzari. Stronger than the Braskers and utterly relentless. Panic spread. The cadets had trained for war. But this wasn't a simulation. Some hesitated. Some fell. And in that chaos, command structure crumbled. Maria saw it happening. The Braskers charged blindly, relying on brute force, but these enemies didn't fight fair. The Inzari tried speed, but the hostiles anticipated their movements. The Vexerans' telepathic coordination failed when their minds were overwhelmed by sheer savagery. Maria didn't hesitate. She assessed the battlefield, ignoring the panic, ignoring the bodies falling around her. She adapted. She shouted orders. Real orders, not the rigid tactics the Academy had drilled into them. Move unpredictably. Don't engage head-on. Separate them. Disrupt their rhythm. Some listened, and those who did survived. She took cover, using the environment to funnel the attackers into choke points. She turned the enemy's speed against them, leading them into traps of their own making. Instead of brute force, she used feints, deception, tactics they weren't prepared for. One by one, the cadets stopped reacting in fear and started fighting smarter. Even Torvek, who had mocked her, began following her lead. The tide shifted. Then came the real test. An enemy commander emerged, larger, faster, more lethal. It moved directly toward Maria, as if recognizing the true threat. She was alone. She didn't run. It struck, and Maria barely dodged, feeling the air rip past her. It was fast, too fast. She couldn't match it in a fair fight, so she made it unfair. She baited it, feigned weakness, let it believe it had her cornered. And when it committed to the kill, she struck first. A desperate move, a calculated risk. Her weapon found its mark, and the enemy collapsed. The remaining hostiles hesitated, just for a moment, but that moment was all the cadets needed. The battle ended in victory. When the dust settled, Maria stood among the survivors, the only reason they were still standing. For the first time, there was no mockery, no disbelief, only respect. The aftermath of the battle changed everything. The once mock human cadet had led them to victory, not through brute strength, not through advanced technology, but through strategy, adaptability, and sheer willpower. Even the Academy's top-ranking instructors had to acknowledge what had just happened. Maria Carter wasn't a fluke. She wasn't lucky. She was better. As the cadets returned, the atmosphere was different. The whispered jokes were gone. The side glances of amusement replaced by something else, recognition. Even Torvek, the same Zelthian who once sneered at her, approached her in silence. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. A slow, respectful nod was all it took. Maria had earned her place. The debriefing was held in the main hall, with instructors reviewing footage of the battle. The commanding officer, a hardened veteran with decades of experience, spoke in a measured tone. You weren't meant to win that fight. That was supposed to be a lesson in loss, a controlled engagement. His gaze landed on Maria. You changed that. You rewrote the script. There was no reprimand, no rebuke, only acknowledgement. Other species had their advantages: strength, speed, telepathic coordination. But humans were something else entirely. Humans are unpredictable. And Inzari Cadet admitted, you don't fight like anyone else. You don't quit, a Brasker added, even when you should. You don't think like us, Torvek said at last. That's why you won. Maria didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The final rankings were posted. She was in the top percentile, not by physical metrics, but by combat effectiveness. She had outperformed warriors who were stronger, faster, more advanced in every way. And now, everyone knew it. The news spread beyond the academy. Earth, once dismissed as a minor player in the galactic order, was now recognized as something else. A wild card, a species that didn't fit the mold, a species that couldn't be underestimated. Maria had paved the way for more humans to join, and they wouldn't be laughed at, not anymore. As she stood outside the barracks, staring up at the alien sky, a message came through on her personal terminal. A new assignment, a real one, not as a cadet. As a soldier, she exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of what came next. The battle was over, but the war, the real test, that was just beginning. Maria Carter wasn't a joke anymore. She was a problem, and the galaxy was about to find out just how dangerous a determined human could be.